Sunny Laugharne, Seimon.
Yes, just about.
Right. Where did you start your photographic career?
Well, I went to Dyfed College of Art. I started in 1983, a long time ago now, and wasn't particularly good at school. Desperate to get out of school, and I had a very, very good art teacher who said, look, try and get into art college. The funny thing is, when I got to art college with a portfolio of work, they gave me an unconditional entry, which was fantastic. But when I said I'd like to do photography, because all my artwork was illustration, they couldn't understand why I wanted to be a photographer. And I thought, well, you know, it's kind of cool, really, you know. So I started photography in '83 and did 2 years in Dyfed College of Art.
Right. Okay. And where did that lead you?
First of all, I had this head on my shoulders when I was in college. I wanted to work. I wanted to get out there and take pictures. And I started contacting magazines. I worked for a Welsh magazine called Screch for a while.
Oh, yes.
Doing all the Eisteddfods just to get a press pass. And I did a lot of band photography. And that was in college. Then leaving college, I was unemployed for a short time and got on a sort of government course sort of thing and did that for a while. And then, strangely enough, a job came up with the MOD. I thought, well, okay, well, you know, it's a photography job, but let's go for it. I didn't think I'd had a chance because I had virtually no qualifications, but I got the job. So I ended up as a high-speed photographer for 11 years, doing sort of ballistics and all that kind of stuff.
Good gracious me.
Which for someone who's tad dyslexic and can't work out mathematics to save his life, I can't work out a shopping bill, let alone. And we're dealing with, you know, 400 foot of film going through a camera, sort of like 3 seconds, and ridiculous framing rates up to 40,000 pictures per second, all that kind of stuff. Bonkers. So, but I did that for 11 years. I'm glad I did, even though I consider myself a pacifist, and working in an industry which was sort of not quite what I liked. I wanted to be in television. But the concept of being in an MOD situation gave me the discipline behind the technical side of photography. Don't ask me about technical stuff, photography stuff, because I don't really know much. I don't particularly care. As long as I can understand what's going on, that does it for me. But the MOD time gave me an understanding of what it was to be prepared.
Right. And what sort of stuff were you doing? Aren't you allowed to talk about it?
Well, I can tell you, I did all the high-speed photography on Thrust SSC, photographing shockwaves. The Thrust SSC was a supersonic car, the car that still holds the land speed record. So I did all the photography for that. They wanted to show the shockwaves of the car. So that was quite interesting, yeah.
Okay. And were you doing still work then as well?
Oh, it was a combination, stills, video.
Okay.
Most of my work was high-speed stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. And when I say high-speed, it would start around about 200, 400 pictures per second. And the most I ever shot was for 40,000 on an incredibly narrow shutter angle, which I don't ask me what the exposure value was, but it was nuts.
I guess discipline is really quite an important aspect of photography.
Well, we were shooting on transparency, reversal film, and so your exposure latitude is quite fine. Yes. So in later work, I found that exceptionally good experience.
Right, okay. And so you left the MOD.
Well, I got made redundant, which was the best thing ever happened to me.
Right, okay.
Second best.
Yeah. And so where did that lead then?
I was very lucky. I had a cameraman's job with S4C. Well, a small little company in Aberystwyth. And they were starting off, and it was a staff job, and it was a chat show, a women's chat show in Welsh. And that was quite an experience because there was no money. It was S4C Digital, I think it was, and there was virtually no budget. So that was another learning curve, you know, working with TV cameras this time and lighting sort of anywhere from an old pub to a leisure centre. So that gave me then an interest in lighting. So I ended up lighting for 3 cameras usually, and that lasted 3 years, and then the contract came to an end. And then I ended up in an office job in National Library of Wales, in the film archive, and in a dark room behind a desk for 18 months, which did my head in. But meanwhile, I had this other sort of, I wouldn't say career, but I had another interest. I got involved with a history channel. When I was working for the MOD, occasionally I get involved in a bit of documentary work from the costume point of view, because I was interested in militaria and history, and I'd started collecting costumes, and I got friendly with quite a few people who worked in the sort of the film business, the high end, you know, so I was dragged into sort of these little projects. So as I was supplying costume and props to various productions, I was finding myself taking photographs as well and ending up doing a lot of stills photography for the History Channel. So that gave me this side interest, really, that ended up with a huge portfolio of reconstruction type images. We'd go to Duxford and we'd pull a B-17 out, or we'd go to Bovington Tank Museum and get the Tiger tank out and stuff like that. Really elaborate stuff. But I was there in the background, sort of just taking the stills and building a collection. And then the photographs started getting published here and there. And whilst I was at the National Library of Wales in Aberystwyth, I had a phone call from Texas one day, from this colonel, a retired colonel. He was a great guy. And he said, "Oh, seen your work." I'm not going to do the accent, right? I said, "We've seen your work, and we'd like you to come and work for us." And I'm thinking, my gosh, you know, this is the phone call that you don't expect.
Yes.
But I said, "Well, yeah, okay." And I was desperate to get up to the library. I said, "Well, the only way I can do the kind of work that you're asking for me to do is if I can do it full time." He said, "Well, draw up your contract." He said, "Send it over and we'll have a look at it." So I did. I wasn't greedy. I based it on really what, you know, the circumstances, financial circumstances I was on in the museum. In the library. And they said, "Yeah." But I didn't know who I was working for. I had no idea. And I didn't really know anything about the magazine at all. I just said, I just decided that this was an opportunity. So when I went on the old computer and found out, I was working for a chap called Eric Weider. And Eric Weider was the son and nephew of Ben and Joe Weider, the bodybuilding and fitness people of the States,
Right.
who also were very passionate about history and decided that they were going to bring out a brand new magazine called Armchair General. Well, Armchair General was a history magazine with an angle on it that you investigated and explored history. And my section, if you like, my department was interactive storylines.
Right.
Now this sounds completely bizarre, but basically what it was, I'd get scripts sent to me from California, and I'd have to interpret these scripts then into photographs.
Wow.
So one week I might be photographing Roman soldiers, and the next week I might be doing a Vietnam reconstruction shoot. The following week, Battle of Towton, D-Day, Battle of the Bulge. So I gather all these people, reenactors, actors, and I go back to the museums that I had been involved with previously through the History Channel, and this time, for me, they'd pull out the tanks and the aircraft, and I'd get to do all these amazing photo shoots.
Amazing photo shoots.
Well, I was very privileged because I was creating my own little films, and that's what I really wanted to do. I wanted to use people, because I'm really interested in photographing people, but my angle on photographing people is taking them out of their own personalities and giving them a chance to be something else.
Okay.
So it's almost like giving somebody who hasn't even acted before or even thought about it an opportunity to just have a bit of fun, really. But obviously with the kind of photography I do, it's very important that I get the character right. Cast people as you would in a film. You'd have casting director, you'd cast somebody who looks the part. So I would do that, and of course I had quite decent budgets behind me to allow me to do this. So I ended up doing that for 4 years, full time. The downside was I was getting paid in dollars, and the photo shoots became more and more expensive because of the dollar-pound exchange rate at the time. And I was shooting still on transparency, medium format. Going back to the technical side of it, I didn't use Photoshop at all. Well, only once to remove a badge from somebody's jacket. But everything else printed was as is on the transparency. Everything was lit, a combination of tungsten, flash, smoke machines, snow machines. Did my own makeup, everything. It was just an opportunity, an experience where I thought I've got to give it a go. Right. And yeah, I did it for 4 years.
But that wanting to create those tableaus, if you like, those reconstructions, has not left you, because you still would.
Oh yeah, totally. Because I'm a firm believer of things are meant to happen for a reason. Totally, more now than ever. And when that job came to an end, it really messed me up. You know, I had to sell a house. I had to move from Aberystwyth. It put me back in a situation where I was pretty desperate, really. And when I started knocking on doors, you know, people that I'd worked with previously, not purely on a professional level, you know, the jobs weren't there anymore. And I thought, well, hold on, you know, I've been lucky, you know, I've worked for Spielberg and people like that, you know. And
no, let's stop there for a second. Tell me about the Spielberg.
Right. Okay. This is a bit bonkers. What happened was I was helping out on Band of Brothers in the costume department, and a very good friend of mine, Joe Hobbs. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. But Joe said to me, "Well, you know, we finished dressing all these actors in parachutes and all that gear," and he said, "Why don't you go down onto the set?" He said, "You know, just be an extra here for the rest of the day. Just enjoy it." So I thought, okay, great. So haircut, uniform. And in the back of the car, I had a 16mm Filmo, clockwork Filmo. And I thought, well, I might as well take it down the set, you know, just extra prop or whatever, be a little bit different. So I'm standing there with this camera in my hand. This assistant director comes up to me and he said, "Oh, have you got film for that?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, great." He said, "Can you shoot a couple of sequences for us?" I said, "Oh, brilliant, yeah, fantastic." So for the rest of the day, I wandered around filming these actors, who I know a lot of them have become quite famous, directing little scenes and filming them on the 16mm camera. Right. And gave about an hour's worth of footage back at the end of the day to the production office. And I didn't hear anything more about it until I went back up then to Hatfield about 2 or 3 months later, again to help out in a situation with costume. And this cameraman comes up to me and he said, "Oh, you're the guy who shot the 16mm stuff." And I said, "Oh, yeah," thinking, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't have." He said, "Haven't you heard?" He said, Tom Hanks and Spielberg had seen the footage and thought it was undiscovered colour archive. I said, "You what?" He said, "Yeah, they thought it was the real thing. There's a tape going around all the departments and they're living it." I said, "You're joking?" He said, "No." So on the back end of that, there's a scene in episode 7 of Band of Brothers where there is a cameraman in the scene. So I get the job. I'm not an actor. It's a good thing it was a speaking part, wasn't it? No, I get the job. So I'm actually in Band of Brothers, dressed as a GI in the forest, filming, but actually shooting at the same time on the 16mm Filmo. Right. So the sequences then were cut into the series. Right. So it was quite bizarre, really. But I was quite, because I was sat, I can tell you this, I was sat around the table in the canteen in Hatfield, and I had Alan Tompkins, art director. He'd worked on JFK, he'd worked on, the first film he ever worked on was something like Ice Cold in Alex. I had Simon Atherton to the right of me, Aliens, James Bond, all that kind of stuff, right? I had Anna Shepherd across the table, costumes for Schindler's List. And they were all having a conversation. I just thought, please don't ask me, because I'm going to have to tell you I'm working for S4C. With no budget. So I thought, no. Yeah.
Did you think at that time that there was an opening into what you wanted to do was be a filmmaker?
No. On the honest answer, this was an opportunity. This was just an opportunity for me to actually glimpse through a window that I never ever thought that I'd have an opportunity and see something totally amazing and take something away from that helped me in a thought process of how my work was to develop. I'd stored that information in the back of my head, and one day it'll come back out there now, because we're sat here in the Tin Shed Museum, which is basically a combination of bad luck and great luck. You know, this was meant to happen. I didn't know it was going to happen, but the whole thing came together. I bumped into an old friend of mine, Andrew, who I knew 25 years ago when we worked with MOD, and I had a crazy idea because I'd had all these items. We thought, well, you know, we'll put a little 1940s dance in the hall in Laugharne, which was a huge success, and that made us realise, well, hold on, maybe we could open up a museum. Okay, well, we started, we had no money, still don't have any money, but the whole point really was it turned into an experience where we bit by bit developed a concept. But always in the back of my mind is that when we were building the tin shed, the cottage, the museum and all the place you see around us now, it's designed with photography in mind, camera angles. It's all about creating a little film set, which hopefully now this coming year I'll brush off the Bronica, it's still working. We're going to find a battery for it. and start getting back into the kind of photography that I used to, but minus the military. The stuff that I used to do for the magazine, it was quite graphic at times, even though it was a magazine that anybody could buy. The content I was asked to do, I was asked to shoot pictures that represented conflict. And I didn't want to do it in such a way to sort of glamorize it. But I had a job to do, and the information that I was given, I had to follow a script. But equally, I wanted to put the drama and you know, the tragedy into it as well, because you know, I would be the last person who wanted to photograph war, to be honest with you. But the subject of war fascinates me, and especially from when you asking people to act their part. And you can get the emotional envelope bounces from one corner to the other, and it's all pretend, nobody gets hurt, but it creates a message, and it's very important.
That must be quite a difficult task when you're just doing stills. I mean, with moving images, you know, but when you're creating tableaus like this and creating sort of and telling a story through one photograph, the element of preciseness and of getting things right goes back to your MOD days then, is it?
Oh yeah, but it's a big combination, because I was shooting medium format transparency. I didn't use a handheld meter, I used the Bronica meter, okay. And I can honestly say, hand on heart, of the thousands of pictures I took on transparency, I think I probably had one roll of film that was underexposed. The transparencies were so consistent in exposure because, you know, I trusted the meter totally. And I just got to know the film stock, I got to know the lighting so well that I knew that when I wanted that shot, because the process wasn't just somebody standing there, I'd act the scene out. I'd tell people, right, this is what's happening to you. You've got to either jump out of the tank, or you've got to, you know, do this or do that or whatever. So we were actually playing a film in their head. And I was just waiting for that moment to go click.
Right, okay.
You know, so it was a combination really of a film approach, but a still result.
Yes. You know. And I was talking to you yesterday, and you were saying you have an idea in your head. You want to use this as a kind of film set, but to create these one-off images again.
Yeah.
Are they going to be specific things? Do you have specific ideas in your head already?
Sort of, but I can't sort of commit at the moment to one particular style, because I like continuity. I like you know, 10, 12 black and white photographs in the same frame, in the same way of hanging, with the same size. I like, for some reason, it was completely messed up really in lots of ways.
No, not at all.
You know, you know what I mean? I like the formula of continuity in a display. So I've got to decide whether I'm going to go realistic or I'm going to go sort of, like, I wouldn't say fantasy, but, you know, quirkiness. We are in Laugharne for, you know what I mean? You know, so the sort of a whole Dylan Thomas thing will have an effect on you. You can't get away from that. Sorry, go on.
No, I just sorry to cut across you, but you've done some stuff. You've done Under Milkwood, haven't you? Have you done recreations of that in Laugharne?
Well, I did one photograph as a little test bed piece about 4 years ago, where I photographed a chap called John Bradshaw with a fish on his head. And then we made a fiberglass model of him, as you do. Um, so it was a case really of just sort of, this was pre-Dylan Thomas anniversary.
Right.
And I had an idea of putting sort of 12 images together but I thought, well, a lot of people have done that and jumped on the Dylan Thomas sort of bandwagon. I don't like jumping on coattails. I like doing my own thing. Yeah. And even though I admire other people's work for doing that, I think what we've created in the Tin Shed is an opportunity for me to get back into my photography. I don't have to drive up and down the M4 like I used to. It's all on site. Yes. And I can light it in my own time. I can think about the concept of what I want to achieve. And very importantly for us, from a Tin Shed point of view, it'll be an album of images that would help promote this place and tell people that we could possibly be a little film set in the township of Laugharne, which is an amazing location for film work. You've got so many different elements of landscape in such a small space. It's a filmmaker's dream. And the people are fantastic. They understand the process of filmmaking because they've had so many camera crews and TV things over the years. But I think it would help the local economy and help us.
The one thing I know from your creating this Tin Shed experience, as you call it, is that you discovered a camera and you came across a camera. Tell me about the camera.
Well, my partner Min discovered it, and we went to a flea market in Carmarthen about 18 months or so ago. And it was one of those strange moments where we're firm believers here. We've had coincidences and happenings and crazy things. And this was one of the crazy moments where, shan't we? Yeah, okay, let's go. Right, okay, we've only got an hour. So we bombed into Carmarthen, ran around this flea market, because I had a list of items I wanted to get for the Tin Shed. And Min said, oh, look, there's a camera for sale over there. So we went over to the guy who was selling it, and he had a combination of sort of, Pentaxes and a Zenit, and then there was this Iconta in the middle, folded up. And we've got a couple of Icontas in the shed. And I thought, well, that's very nice. But it had a military lanyard as a strap. So I'm looking at the camera and I'm contemplating, right, how can I explain to Andrew about buying a camera that we've already got with money that we haven't? And I thought, oh, heck, I'll buy it. So we got it for, I think it's about 75, 80 quid or something like that. But as I'm sort of literally packing it away, he said, oh, there's paperwork with this, the guy says. So he goes underneath the table and he pulls up a plastic envelope. And I just accept the envelope as part of the package. I didn't really think much of it. So later that night, I sat down, I better check this camera out now. So I put the camera on the table, started going through the paperwork, and there was a receipt dated 1965. Super Iconta, bought in Photovision in Leicester for £17. And the serial number matched the receipt. And then I carried on going through the paperwork, and there was letters and documentation. A guy called Atkinson had bought this camera from Photovision in Leicester, and then had proceeded in researching the camera and writing letters back to the Imperial War Museum and the Leicester Mercury. Now you've got to remember, this is the 60s, early 70s. Asking questions about a chap called James Mapham, Sergeant James Mapham. Well, the reply was, yeah, this was one of his cameras, but Sergeant James Mapham was responsible for taking what the American press described in the Second World War as the greatest war picture ever taken. And it's British soldiers landing on the beaches of Normandy. There's a column of soldiers coming off the beach. You know the photograph. And there's two guys, one guy looking straight up into the lens of the camera, another guy with a head turn. And you can see the column and you can see the ships in the mist. And that photograph quite possibly could have been taken by the camera that we had bought in Carmarthen. So we're still researching it. I can't be 100% certain. Nobody can, unless there's some kind of, bit of defect on the frame or something, and you can match the negative. The negatives are in the Imperial War Museum. So we've yet to sort of really get our teeth into it. But the circumstances and the coincidences that have happened through this camera is just amazing. And so if we could confirm, it was definitely owned by him. We know that. So it was handled by James Mapham. Where they took that picture, who knows? But it's a nice story.
Intriguing story, isn't it? Yeah. So, What do you regard yourself as, Simon? Do you regard yourself as a photographer or a museum curator?
Drummer. Oh, no, that's a funny one. I don't know. I think the thing about a lot of photography, a lot of photographers, you know, yourself, is you know, we hide behind cameras a lot of the time,
Yes.
and I've hidden behind mine many a time. It's got me the most amazing experiences in life. You know, I've flown in Mustangs. I've come off landing crafts with a camera in my hand.
Right.
I've been on some of the most amazing film sets because of photography. It's been my life. It's changed my life right from the very beginning, I suppose. I don't really know anything else. I'm quite confident behind the camera, but quite shy as well. I don't like what you're doing. As in, no, not your work. What I mean is,
Yes.
I couldn't do I couldn't go up and to somebody in the street and say, hey, can I take a picture? Or I couldn't sort of, I just feel, poof,
Yeah.
you know, I can do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've got to be in control because I've got to know the people who are around me because I need them to understand what I'm doing.
Yes.
And I think, you know, it's for them to know what I'm doing is part of the equation because I like getting people involved.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know, so to answer your question, yeah, I suppose I am really.
Yes.
But
you would still go back to the old Bronica and the transparency.
yeah. If I had loads of money, and if I had a dark room and everything else that goes with it, oh yeah, I'd love to go through back to the Bronica.
Right.
You know, I purely for financial reasons, I don't know whether the next project will be done on film or digital.
Do you think the same techniques and the same what's the word? The same disciplines apply to digital as they do to film?
No, I think I had this phrase in my head when autofocus cameras, you know, auto exposure, focus, auto picture. You know, I just felt that when I first owned my first kind of do everything camera, but the standard of my work just went like that because it was just so convenient to shoot so many pictures and then go, yeah, that'll do, that one there. And I'll tweak it a bit.
Right.
You know, I'm not into that.
Yes.
And the old sort of decisive moment sort of approach, really. Which, to me, even though it's funny, really, I suppose you could say about this museum, this sums up my approach to a lot of things, is there's a hard way and there's an easy way. And for some reason, I always go for the hard way, you know. This museum is created because of hard work and determination and a great bunch of people using second-hand materials and zinc sheets that people would have been throwing away. And it's almost a representation of, you know, yes, you could, when I was working for the magazine, it would have been so easy for me to go on a course and learn how to do Photoshop. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do it the old-fashioned way. And believe me, you know, I really, for my own good, really, I think that that was the way to do it for me, and I stand by it.
Right,
No
okay.
regrets. Yeah.
So, are there any other formats? Because you're working with medium format. Do you work with any other types of cameras? Did you work with large format cameras at all? Or?
No, I was a bit scared of large format. I had a bad experience in college.
Oh, come on, tell me about the bad experience.
Holes in the bellows.
That's a bad experience.
Yeah, no, I think the Bronica, I bought a Bronica. Somebody told me, don't touch a Bronica because they're prone to electrical faults or whatever.
Right.
And I had this Bronica and never let me down. And I've still had, I think it's 30 years old now.
So what lenses do you work with?
For years, only 75.
Right, okay.
Yeah, for years. And then when I working for Armchair General, my boss was brilliant. He said, right, I'll give you a budget. You can buy camera equipment, you can buy computer, you can buy smoke machines, it was fantastic. So I invested in a couple of lenses and I got a wide angle and I think it was a 105, I think.
Right.
That's something big, I can't remember. But yeah, but I don't know, the Bronica for me was such a perfect frame and because you could use it like a 35mm,
Right.
you know, it was so nice to hold. And my gosh, we put that through some hard times, you know. It's but it never let me down. It was fantastic camera. Yeah.
Interesting though about your framing and putting a frame together and seeing how it looks through that ground glass and stuff. So you were saying earlier that when you went to college, you were you were an illustrator.
Yeah.
So your eye, I guess you've never found difficulty in framing things.
No, I'm quite. I've seen you work, and you're down on your knees, and you're up high, and what have you. I'm eye level. As high as I stand is where I tend to shoot most of my pictures.
Right, okay.
So I tend to shoot, and then I tend to crop quite. I wouldn't say tightly, but I'm very conscious of things because I'm not Photoshop orientated. I'm adjusting my lens or adjusting my composition on site, so to speak. So I'll move around and I'll hide something behind somebody's head or whatever if I'm not happy with a particular aspect of it. I'll do something to hide it in that frame, you know. But I do tend to fill the frame, and the old sort of Kappa saying, if you're not close enough, definitely,
indeed.
you know, get in there.
Yeah, indeed.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's funny because I've tried to do something similar to what you do, and I find it really, really difficult. And when I go back and look at the work, there's always something not quite in the right place. So that attention to detail, you must have, because you're not always seeing everything through that.
No, and I think over the years, I think you've got to accept the fact it's never going to be perfect.
Right.
Yeah. And you just go, right, okay, this is not going to be perfect, but it's honest. Even though it's a creation, it's an honest creation. You know, I remember I took a photograph of Napoleon's retreat from Moscow, and I had this sentimental, romanticised image of a drummer boy being carried on the back of a soldier. I was all shot in a quarry up in North Wales, using an old duvet as snow in the foreground. And
right, okay, being creative.
Yeah. But there's one single snowflake that's just come into the eye of the soldier. But you know, I had somebody criticise the photograph once. He said, "Oh, that snowflake, it's distracting." I think, well, yeah, it is. But you know, have a look at the rest of the picture, see what you think.
Yes.
You know, but don't worry, it's never going to be perfect.
No.
But then, why should it be? You know,
You've made, there's a lovely picture that you made of First World War One soldiers.
The Guardian Angel
the
picture.
Guardian Angel picture.
That was my first ever one-man exhibition in Aberystwyth, about 5 years ago now. And having done all the photography for this American History magazine, I wanted to do something similar in style, but also something that came from my point of view, really. And it was an anti-war statement. It was a picture that I decided I wanted to take to sum up, really, the horrors of the Great War and the sadness of it, but also hope at the end of the tunnel. So it was shot on a pig farm in Norfolk. Costumes and all proper costumes, reproduction stuff, but you know, authentic. And then we had a dress made then for the Guardian Angel. Her name was Holly. She was fantastic, and the rest of the family. Her father was one of the soldiers. Her brother was the other one. Lighting was completely different for me because it was a very flat front lit. Shots. I think that was probably one of my first ever digital pictures. Even though I shot it on an old Iconta as well. The one that worked with combination of elements was actually on digital. So there you are. I've contradicted really everything I've said. But no, that one there was one of those shots that has had probably the most impact on people who have seen it. We know because it's hanging up in the museum. I've had people literally in tears looking at it, especially when you put it in context of what the museum represents. You know, we're not interested in politics or tactics. We're very much about people's stories and accounts. So when you have the artifacts on display and we explain to people about these stories, and then that image then is one of the last things that we refer to, it does hit people quite hard sometimes, you know.
actually, you probably you fall into the same photographic area as Annie Leibovitz. Annie Leibovitz makes huge constructions and things, and organises, and the shoots are, specific, and she gets her stuff on covers of Vogue. Are you not sort of?
No, I'm not. I'm not driven. I suppose I was at one time, But I think when I said to you earlier on about being involved in Band of Brothers, it was great to be involved in Band of Brothers from a costume point of view, because being surrounded by all these people and having Spielberg and Tom Hanks sort of on your shoulder there, and you think, my gosh, I'm a lad from Minkia with 2 O-levels, I think. What's going on here? But when the whole camera thing happened with the 16mm, that was my experience. That for me was something that
just that 100-foot of film was.
Well, it was one of those moments of, right, okay, this is good. It's as good as it's going to get for me, and but now I can. I think it's the difference really between somebody wanting your work and somebody and you needing to do work. That's the driving force for me a lot of the time, because I've been very, very lucky over the years. I've always been in a position where I've worked for others. Somebody's actually asked me to do photography for them. So it's nice to know that your work is of a standard that somebody wants it. But when that stops happening, and then you have to start creating your own projects and ideas, and you have to sort of decide, well, okay, I need to do this for my. That's the difficulty for me, is to say, right, you've got to do this for your own.
Would you show again? Would you like to show again?
Well, that's the plan, yeah. That is the plan. But I've got to feel, because I've had about a 5-year gap out of serious photography. I've taken photographs, but not in the way that I used to. But I think I needed that as well, because going from something. Because the status, the magazine I was working for was I think it was number 25 best American magazine by the time I left them. So they'd gone up the scale in America hugely. So a lot of my work was seen in the States. Admittedly not, it wasn't on Vogue, but it was, we had something like, probably 150,000 sales on the magazines, and I think it was about 1 million people who were following it on the websites. So it was a high-end magazine in the context of the kind of work I was doing. But I think from my point of view now, I just have to decide that I'm going to set myself a project. I've got gallery space in St Clair's already lined up, so I've committed to that. So that should get me focused a bit. But
is recognition important to you?
I think that at one time it was, because I think because being so bad in school, I'm feeling that I needed to prove myself. I think photography was a good way of showing, look, I can do this, and I'm not bad at it, So I think it was in that way important. But it's nice to know. I don't like offending people, but also I also feel like I want to get a message out there. So I tend not to be controversial in the stuff I do. I tend to be sort of quite reserved in stuff. But also then there's a sneaky one that comes out, which kind of turns heads sometimes.
It's really funny, because I've been in your museum, and I think there was when I first met you, I think, and there was you had a picture of a GI there, and I thought it was and I think you'd taken it. It was he's leaning against. It's a wonderful picture. Oh, and it's one that you took. And I thought it was taken during the war.
Referring to the black and white guy in the snow.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That was quite bizarre. That was one of my first ever proper reconstruction shots. It was a documentary for S4C, and it was about a chap called Danny Harris, who's a Welshman. The Welsh-speaking Welshman in the American Airborne doing the Battle of the Bulge. And Danny, a lovely chap, and we put this little documentary together, and it was an opportunity to actually buy some effects. We bought some snow effects, and I had some of the lads that I knew from the filmmakers side of things. They came down and they got dressed up in original uniforms and equipment. And I took this particular photograph of a guy sat looking at the camera.
Yeah.
And a couple of years later, I had a guy from the States phone me up and he said, can I use some of your reconstruction stuff? And I said, yeah, fine, no problem at all. You're bringing out a book. So I sent him a box full of photographs. And anyway, a couple of months later, the photographs come back, but that picture's missing. But some of the photographs are in there, so it's got mixed up somewhere. So about a year or 2 years later, I get this phone call. Quick, turn the telly on. So I missed the particular sequence, but there was this sort of highbrow intellectual program about war photography, talking about Robert Capa, and they showed my photograph.
No!
They're talking about Robert Capa's ability to capture the soldier's face, and there was an 8-second slow zoom into my mate John Rowe sat on a box in Aberystwyth with fake snow around him.
My jaw's just dropped.
Bonkers. Well, their jaw dropped when I phoned them up. And,
I bet it is.
And I said, I had a great program. It was a company called Digital Ranch in California.
All right.
And I said, a great program. Oh, thank you very much. You know, you used one of my photographs in it. You could hear the weeds going across the desert in the background. Oh, really? Yes, I said, but don't worry about it. You know, it was a great honour. You know, well, you know, you're not going to cause problems. Just no, not at all. I said, you know, just pay me what the going rate was. I think I got a Graflex flash gun out of it. But yeah, you know, what can you say? It's a great story. It's totally true. It happened to me.
Wow.
You know, but it was just one of those sort of moments, you know.
Yeah. That's an astonishing story, actually. Because I was thrown by it when I saw it. Yeah. Because you made a large, I think, it's
a big print.
It's a big print. And I was thrown by it. I thought it was an original.
It's a strange subject to be involved in, because what I like to do is to create scenarios that are quite rough, really. I wouldn't want to be in the situation that a lot of photographers were taking these pictures, but my editor at the time, a chap called Jerry Morlock, he was a Vietnam veteran, and I sent him a photograph once of a combat scene that I did, and he phoned me up and he said, I've just had your pictures from the Vietnam shoot you did. He said, they're just too real. This is exactly how I remember it. And I thought, my gosh, you know, that's a statement and a half. Yeah. From somebody who'd witnessed these things, you know.
So how much research would you do before?
Oh, I'd do loads. But I know a little bit about the Second World War and, you know, uniforms and equipment at that time. So I know enough of that about that to get me by. But I'd always then call in on reenactors and experts who could then, you know, take it up to the next level. When I did the Battle of Towton, I know nothing about medieval stuff, but I had the contacts who could give me the, you know, all the sort of historical accuracy that needed.
Did it go down to accuracy as far as film stock was concerned, or did you? No,
that's not practical for mine. But when I did the shooting for Band of Brothers, the camera wasn't capable of working with the 400-foot film stock which they bought for me. But so what I did, I cut ND filters out and I stuck them in the lens, which reduced the film speed, but kept the grain and so desaturized it a bit.
Right. Okay.
So it that was quite authentic looking, even though, you know, you probably know on the strip of Kodak film you've got like a little sequence of symbols that tells you the date of the stock. Yes. So unless you looked at that, I suppose even looking at the film would be, you know. But that was quite interesting because the lens on the film was a very small lens, fixed focus. Yes. That was wonderful. Didn't have to do anything, just pointed it at other people.
Just press the trigger.
Yeah. I wound it up a few times. You know. Yeah, no, that was good though.
Well, you didn't have a boom man in the background.
Oh, it's silent. clapperboard. No, you had a slate with a bit of chalk on it, and you did the
Would you do that sort of stuff? I mean, if you were recreating, and because you say, as you say here, that you've created a kind of film set, would you do that? Would you think about using that kind of technique again to tell stories about?
No, too expensive nowadays.
Okay.
If somebody else was paying for it, then that's different. And I don't mean that in an unkind way. What I mean is that it's gone so expensive nowadays, and you have to actually, I think 10, 15 years ago, I was such attention to detail and content-wise, you had to be accurate because somebody out there would pick it up, and I didn't like the idea of sort of falling short in those terms,
Yes.
But now with, I think the content is far important now than the, even though I prefer to shoot on the Bronica, I may have to shoot on digital. But I would love to go back and shoot HP5 on medium format and push it a few stops and all that kind of stuff.
If the opportunity came along, let's say, serendipitous, because you believe in that.
Oh, totally.
Yeah. And somebody arrived here and you got another phone call saying that we want you to do this and want you to recreate it. You'd go like a shot, wouldn't you?
No. I've done it. I've been there, done it. I've got the T-shirt. I'm very happy. And to be honest with you, the travelling and everything else took it out of me. I was so tired of, working long hours. And the problem is, I loved working the long hours, and I was like 10 years younger at that time, and I felt that this was something. I'd found my dream job, but also I lost my dream job as well. So, and now this tin shed now is everything about the accumulation of everything that's happened to me in the past that's come together in a site.
Right,
which is, the only reason that this will fail now is if we let it fail, and that hopefully, touch wood, that's not going to happen. But what I'd like is for people to appreciate and enjoy what we've created here, and maybe other photographers, we've had a lot of students coming here and do their
right.
because we're so easygoing here in terms of what. We don't say, rubber chins, and go, no, you can't do it, mate, sorry. I've been in those situations so many times with jobs worths and that sort of thing, and you think, if only. So when we get young filmmakers or photographers or whatever come in here and they want to do a project, yeah, fine, what do you want?
So that educational aspect of photography, you think is important then, that you give young people an opportunity?
Oh, totally, yeah, I think so. Because, it's so difficult to be fresh about ideas today. Everything's been done. What hasn't been done? Oof, gosh, that's a tough one. I think I was quite privileged when I was working as probably the only full-time reconstruction photographer. I can't think of anybody else who was doing it full-time, and I had a purpose behind it. I was shooting stuff for the magazine, which was great. But some of my work, I had an exhibition in Aberystwyth, like I mentioned earlier to you, and I had somebody come round and I said, your stuff should be in an art gallery. And I'm thinking, okay, how do you work that then? Well, it says something, but also it's you can appreciate it even if you're not into the subject. You can. I thought, well, okay, well, I can see where you're coming from, but it's I've been very fortunate, but equally, I'm not in the business full time. I have friends who work full time in the film business, and they don't seem to have time to do other stuff. They're always doing something, and I think, well, a combination of what we've done, photography, and with the museum, has now created a place where we're not just into a bit of history, and I don't mean that lightly, but we're very much into music, and we're very much into drama and theatre, and you can see the potential of what we have around here, and you can see how easy it is to walk in here and say, actually I want to do a short film for my college project. And I say, well, okay, do it then. And it has been done. We've had a few people doing it,
Do you give them advice?
I try to stay a little bit on the side. I have helped out, and I've shown them how to light things, and backlight and a bit of smoke. You can't go wrong. So it's been a case of stepping in when they ask, but I don't force my opinions on them. It's because I think it's important to stand back. You can't. In today's sort of environment, I think it's important that you do learn the basic skills at least, and because otherwise you'll be cheating yourself.
Yes, indeed, because that's the tendency. I mean, everybody can buy a camera these days, digital camera, and everybody's a photographer, so they say.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's not the case, is it?
Oh, good gosh, no, it's not the case. But I don't, I don't like criticising people's work. I think my personal attitude to life in general is, give it a go. And do the best you can. There's stuff I like and there's the stuff I don't like. But I don't.
Who do you admire as a photographer?
Lee Miller.
Right. Okay.
Lee Miller. Her work to me is an amazing combination of surreal art and a situation and circumstances that pushes the boundaries into it's and of course, being a woman working in with the military in the Second World War, my gosh, you know what I mean?
And not tough cookie.
Yeah, I think so. We're very fortunate. We're very friendly with Tony Penrose, her son. He's been down to the tin shed a couple of times, and he's talked about his mother's work and stuff. And lovely man, great bloke. But I've always liked her work. And very fortunate to have got to know Tony as well. I wouldn't want to think that I would want to try and emulate her work at any one time. Just to take a little diversion there, is that you're talking about emulation. When you were recreating, was there? It must have been in the back of your mind about when you were recreating stuff, especially to do with the Second World War, that you were obviously you were looking at photographs from that era. Oh yeah.
So was there an element of emulation there, or were you putting your own spin on it, or were you trying to create a bigger story than perhaps that in a picture that had influenced you?
Well, I think subconsciously you'll always have something in the back of your mind that might sort of appear, and then the drummer boy picture that I took, I think somebody did a painting of it once. So but then with the kind of work that I was doing, even though I was shooting photographs that represented combat and warfare, believe it or not, I was trying to avoid the old holding the gun up to the camera shot, because I wanted to get the emotion between the action. I had to supply images that represented a certain scene, a bit of combat or this, that, the other. But the shots that worked for me the most were the documentary style shots that were actually totally set up. Yes. So, you capture that moment where the guy turned and you got it. Even though it was all pretend, that was the bit where I thought, right, okay, I've got that shot now that could represent. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolute sense. Were you worried about, everybody's obsessed with sharpness these days, digital, everything has to be pin sharp.
Yeah.
Were you obsessed with that, or did that bother you, or did you kind of soften things off sometimes, a tiny tad out of focus? Or
my MOD days, every time I got something a little bit soft, I got told off for it.
And that stayed with you?
Yeah. So it's the eyes. I quite lucky. I've got reasonably good eyesight. It's not as good as it used to be, but I always wanted to get the eyes pin sharp. And
we still do today.
We still do today. Yeah.
That's the essence of a human being, isn't it?
And band photography taught me that. Yeah. Shooting, what did I have then? I think I had a Canon something. And 135 lens on the side of the stage. Nice lens. And you're just, you're like this, and because I'm a drummer, or play the drums anyway. I'm always, interested in musicians and the emotion. You could say that the musician's emotion on the stage and what I used to do with reconstruction is very similar, really.
And drummers are very difficult to photograph.
Are they? Are we awkward?
Yes, because the bloody drumsticks move too fast and there's never enough lighting, is there?
Well, you'll have an opportunity
Yes,
in about an hour.
Smashing. Thank you very much, Simon.
Diolch yn fawr. Thank you.